Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Ben Milborn. I'm with Data On. And this is Benjamin Clements with Strategic Online Systems. And today we're here to talk about VMware exit strategies. Just show of hands, how many people are using VMware today, primarily in the, wow, okay. That is almost everybody. Okay, that makes sense, now that you mention that. Well, thank you. So, we at Data On, we specialize in one of the alternative offerings on the market called Azure Stack HCI. It's a Microsoft offering. And, Microsoft's all about cloud, I think, as we all know. And, and the way that they see the future in data centers is everything is going hybrid, right? Where there's certainly a need for on-premise infrastructure, like many of you are still running VMware today. You're probably also considering moving some of that stuff to the cloud, but there's still some need to keep stuff on-premise. And so, this journey is something that we help customers with. We've had this sign at probably the past 3 ACESs that we've been to. Right now it's with Howard at a different trade show right now, but Broadcom's here, guys. And it used to say Broadcom's coming because we knew about this acquisition a couple of years before before it closed, and it's here. And just like everybody predicted, they're screwing everybody over. There's people saying, like, right here on Reddit, Broadcom support is an absolute horror show. They're laying people off. They're hiking up prices, and it's why you guys are all here today with us. And Microsoft, from a cost perspective, it is pretty straightforward the way they do things. A couple ways you can do it. You can do pay as you go, or which many of our customers are using this Azure hybrid benefit. So you may have been paying VMware, you're paying vCenter, you're also paying Microsoft for your Windows Data Center licenses to run your VMs and stuff too. If you have software assurance on your Windows Data Center cores, that makes you eligible for this Azure hybrid benefit where you literally don't have to pay any additional license or subscription costs to run Azure Stack HCI. And so even if you don't have software assurance, some of our customers are actually buying new data center licenses with software assurance just to be eligible, because this is the most cost-effective way, obviously, to run Azure Stack HCI. And we could talk more about that too. According to Veeam, actually, in a very recent blog post from their CIO, Azure Stack HCI is the #1 most considered alternative to VMware today, right? I mean, it's clearly, they're leading the pack, right? And so a lot of people are looking at this as, as an alternative. Comparing the two offerings here, you can start with just a single node, which is kind of cool. So, you can start with a single node cluster, we call it, and you can scale that out into a multi-node, highly available cluster and continue to go up to 16 nodes. It has native integration with Azure, very simple billing model. If you don't have software assurance, it costs $10 per core per month. You have joint support with both Data On and Microsoft. And because Azure Stack HCI is an Azure service, you have support under the Azure support team and their SLAs and everything too. So they actually have a dedicated team of engineers on the Azure support that's only supporting Azure Stack HCI, and also Data On. We only support Azure Stack HCI, obviously. There are a lot of myths. When I talk with customers, there's this perception that, people thought Microsoft was killing off Hyper-V when they heard that they were actually discontinuing the free edition of Hyper-V Server 2019 because going forward now they're going to put all that R&D into Azure Stack HCI because that is the premier virtualization platform for Microsoft. They want everybody, if you're doing Hyper-V, they want you doing it on Azure Stack HCI. So the free version of Hyper-V Server is really what's going away. Hyper-V itself is everywhere. It's in Xbox, it's on Windows, it's in Azure, and so it has a very big role in Microsoft and a very bright future there. Fortune 500s, 95% of them are running Hyper-V too, in addition to VMware, so it's, you know, it's everywhere. It's not difficult. I mean, it's not that hard to use. You guys understand virtualization. I mean, a lot of those concepts, fundamentals carry over. Some people think it might not be compatible with many infrastructures. It really is. I mean, it's you know, it's a software-defined technology. It can run on basically anything. We've even repurposed some VMware infrastructure into Microsoft Hyper-V based before. Some people might think it's like difficult to migrate. There's actually, we have a few slides, we'll talk about it, but there's many different options to migrate from VMware, get converted over to Hyper-V, which we help with. And Microsoft support is terrible, and that's actually a fact, but Azure Stack HCI support under the Azure support umbrella is night and day difference compared to regular Microsoft enterprise support. And you can talk to any of our customers and they'll tell you the same thing. Gartner has published their 2024 Magic Quadrant for Distributed Hybrid Infrastructure, and Microsoft is leading the pack here in the completeness of vision as well as their ability to execute, right? VMware used to be much higher last year. They've literally taken a nosedive. And you know, we have the report, we can share it with anybody who's interested, but if you look down at the Microsoft section and you look at their strengths, they have a single DHCI, distributed hybrid infrastructure offering, right, from OEM partners, and they actually mention Data On right there. You see it? Dell, Lenovo, HPE, and Data On, right? So we're in a Gartner report, which is, I'm just super stoked about that because we didn't even have to pay them a penny. You know, and it was actually Microsoft who told them to list us on there, right, as a, you know, one of the 4 OEM partners to deliver these solutions. Here's a comparison of the 2023 versus 2024 quadrant, and you can see that Microsoft now, you know, is just moving, you know, up and to the right. So, you know, a lot of people, you know, may still be running kind of a legacy 3-tiered disaggregated infrastructure today where you have your server, your VMware cluster, you've got your, you know, your SANs, and then you've got your network, and it's all different vendors. You know, this is a hyper-converged infrastructure here where you combine those 3 components into a single system here, which is our specialty, and you know, and it's scalable because it's the same thing that's that Azure is built on. And with Microsoft, once you're on Azure Stack HCI, you have all of these integrated services and capabilities with Azure that allow you to replicate virtual machines to the cloud for DR, run cloud services on-premise like Azure Virtual Desktops, manage multiple different clusters with Azure Arc, right? So that's Arc is the key that ties the on-premise infrastructure into Azure and allows you to see everything, whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, in other clouds, all through the single pane of glass in the Azure portal. And from a big picture, this is you know, this is what it would look like. An Azure Stack HCI starts from the bottom with some certified integrated hardware, such as Data On. On top of that, you actually are running the Azure OS, the Azure Stack HCI OS, and there's 3 main components there to do Hyper-V, storage spaces direct, which is the software-defined storage piece of it, software-defined networking, and then above that, you spin up your VMs. You can have unlimited Windows, Linux, Azure Virtual Desktop session hosts, even Kubernetes service, all running alongside each other on the same infrastructure. And you got all these hybrid services that you can connect up if you want, right? If you don't want to, don't have to. So Data On, we're a fully US-based company. We've been around for over 35 years. We are 100% focused on Microsoft. We are, and specifically on their on-premise hybrid infrastructure solutions and services. And we have the most number of solutions on the catalog we'll show you in a bit, and then we have our own software that we could stack on top of that, give you a little better visibility and monitoring capability. And all our hardware is actually Intel. designed servers. So, right up there alongside Dell, HP, Lenovo in terms of raw hardware build and capability. It's Intel server with NVIDIA networking components and even GPUs now. And so we've been on this journey with Microsoft for over a decade, beginning with Server 2012 R2 when they first introduced storage bases, which was a shared storage, software-defined. That evolved into Storage Bases Direct with Server 2016, which is a true hyper-converged shared nothing model. Since then, now it's really grown into this hybrid solution spanning, not only on-premise, but now multi-sites with all these services and everything too. And so we've grown a lot alongside Microsoft over the years. And not just in the municipality side. I mean, we have customers in all across the board. Retail, education is a big one for us. Financial services, service providers, 3-letter federal agencies, and these are just data on customers. There are many, many more from other OEM partners out there too. So it's it's real. And but we have been very focused lately on the state and local government side because many of you folks from our discussions, we find that you already have the software licensing for Windows Data Center with software assurance to make you eligible for the Azure Hybrid benefit for Azure Stack HCI. So that means you don't have to pay any license or subscription cost to run it, right? So you can literally kick VMware to the curb, get some certified hardware, and get moving, right? So Snohomish County is one of our longest, greatest customers that we have. JD would love to tell you more if you want to hear from a customer standpoint. We just recently got Stevens County too. Stevens County is a great customer of ours. We have many more across the state here, and we hope to just keep adding more logos here. So just a little bit about our solutions. I mentioned we use Intel servers. Here's kind of our server portfolio. We don't have a whole lot, right? I mean, we pick the few ones that are designed with different use case and workloads and applications in mind. So, starting from the top, we have a 1U, 12-bay pizza box server, good for remote office, branch office, or small to medium-sized business deployments. Beneath that, we have a GPU optimized system. We'll talk more about some use cases for GPUs, but that system is designed specifically to house GPUs in there. Beneath that, we have our hybrid system. So that's a 2U 12-bay system that combines NVMe high-speed cache with high-capacity, like 22 terabyte hard drive. So we could get a lot of capacity in this 2U 12-bay system, and it's still very fast, very high performant because it's all fronted with high endurance NVMe cache. And at the bottom, we got a 2U 24-bay. That's an all NVMe system. So if you're looking for just max IOPS and performance, you definitely be looking at that one. Some of the use cases, right, is we talk about VMware, right, and getting moved over to Hyper-V, also modernizing and refreshing your infrastructure with HCI is a big one. Being able to run at the edge. SQL is another great use case for the Microsoft solution, and Kubernetes service now too. We actually talked to, I think, the first state and local customer ever that is actually doing Kubernetes, and that was, and you can do that on Azure Stack HCI, which is pretty cool. Security is built in, so the latest version of Azure Stack HCI has all these security policies. Microsoft's taking a secure by default mindset now going forward with this OS. Previously, it had always been like, oh, if you want encryption, that's something you do after you get the cluster deployed and everything set up, then you go do the encryption. Well, now encryption is by default. Like that is part of the deployment. You cannot deploy unencrypted clusters now. So, this is their mindset going forward. So everything's highly secure, and that's like the whole premise, right? Is you want things secure and you want data sovereignty, right, on-prem. VDI Azure Virtual Desktops is a recently new hybrid service that Microsoft has now brought down on premise. And again, this is our mindset where Azure is an adaptive cloud, right? Where you may think of Azure as like, oh, it's a cloud, right? Azure could be anywhere. And this is an example where they've taken Azure Virtual Desktop, a service that was born in the cloud, pulled it down on premise. Now you can run on your own hardware that you own and you manage yourself. You have a lot of benefits there. I mean, it could be cost, it could be latency for your users, or security. And Azure, the latest version of Azure Stack HCI, one of the key components is Azure Arc, right? And what is Arc? Arc is the control plane that connects your on-prem servers, virtual machines, resources to Azure, to the Azure portal. So obviously, to run Azure Stack HCI, you need to have an Azure account. You have to connect it to your subscription. This cluster, before you can actually deploy it, you got to connect it to your subscription. And in every virtual machine that you deploy on 23H2 going forward will be automatically Arc enabled. And that allows you to see it as a resource. You can apply tags to it in the Azure portal. You do all kinds of management and administrative tasks on it. And, and you could tie in other, like even some of your legacy VMware clusters. You can slap the Arc agent in there. You can connect it. There is a cost if you do it for, outside the HCI cluster, but that's another benefit of Azure Stack HCI is that for any virtual machine or resource that you enable Arc for on the HCI cluster, there's no extra cost. Azure Migrate is now supported with Azure Stack HCI. So, Azure Migrate originally was, hey, if you want to take all your VMware stuff, you want to move it all up to Azure, that's the way to do it. Well, now you can actually take your VMware on-premise and migrate it to Azure Stack HCI, fully on-premise. All that data stays on-prem. It's just orchestrated and done through the Azure Migrate service. And that is supported now. That had been actually a kind of a pain point for us. Even before the Broadcom acquisition closed, Microsoft had no native tool to migrate ESXi to Hyper-V. And so we would have to use alternate methods to do it from third-party software, to get those converted and migrated over. Well, now you have the option to do it with Azure Migrate, which is still in preview, but we've done it now for several customers, and it works perfectly fine. This is an example of a real-world migration away from VMware, where not only did they have 330 ESXi VMs, they had an aging 3-tier legacy SAN environment, and they realized, and this was 5 years ago, but they realized that, hey, why are we paying VMware when we already own the Windows Data Center licenses for Microsoft? We can run unlimited Hyper-V. Why do we need VMware? So they came to DataOn, they needed some help. We actually not only designed them some primary HCI clusters for their city hall, but then also a disaster recovery target in, about 150 miles away from their primary site. We use Veeam to back up and then restore their virtual machines one by one into the Veeam repository down there at the bottom, which is, just one of the same nodes we would use for HCI, except we just attach a JBOD to it for a bunch of cheap and deep storage. Back up the VM into there, and then restore it into the Azure Stack HCI cluster, and that's how we moved them over from VMware. So Veeam's also another great option. If it seems like most folks are using Veeam or something else like Commvault or Rubrik, like these backups, restore methods are another way that we are helping customers migrate away. And some of the building blocks for Azure Stack HCI really is, the whole premise of hyper-converged software-defined infrastructure really is that it should be built on off-the-shelf hardware, right? Like instead of being locked into vendors with their own proprietary fiber channel, fancy, expensive equipment, it's like off-the-shelf hardware, right? So we're using Intel x86, the latest 5th gen Xeon scalable CPUs. Network is a key component of the Azure Stack HCI solution. So it is using industry standard Ethernet, but specifically a protocol called RDMA, Remote Direct Memory Access, which makes or breaks the system. So it's very important. We use NVIDIA, which acquired a company called Mellanox, if some of you have heard of it. They were one of the pioneers of RDMA technology, so now they're called NVIDIA NIC cards that we use, as well as NVIDIA switches to handle the RDMA switch fabric of the cluster, but then those can integrate into just about any existing switch environment you have today, if it's Cisco or Juniper or whoever else. We use SSDs, we use NVMe SSDs, and hard drives, really, for some of our bulk storage solutions. I'll just skip those three. Here's a little bigger picture of our 4 server platforms and kind of the different use cases for these. DataOn is an integrated system provider. So what does that mean? Microsoft, when they introduced and announced availability of Azure Stack HCI, they said, guys, we really want to be taken seriously as a player in the space, right? So they created a new tier. In fact, now we have 3 tiers of solutions for Azure Stack HCI. Originally, it was just the bottom 2. So you had a validated node, which was like, you look at the catalog, I mean, there's like probably 30 different validated node partners. There's hundreds and hundreds of different solutions. It's relatively easy to become a validated node partner because you just pass a test and you're done. Whereas an integrated system requires a lot more rigorous testing and validation with Microsoft. They are continuously tested. They have to be designed and easily procurable based on whatever the application use case could be. They are jointly tested and supported by both the partner and Microsoft. And so we literally have to give them these same servers that they keep in their lab, and they're testing every new update before they push it out to the public. And they're only doing that testing on integrated systems and above. And you have just the premier support, right? And you have it not only from DataOn, but also from Microsoft, the Azure support team. Whereas a validated node, if you try to call Microsoft for support, or you call the Azure support team for support, they'll say, go to Supermicro because we can't help you, or whoever the partner is, because you only get that with integrated systems and above. And very recently, actually this year, they introduced a 3rd tier called Premier Solutions. So if you go to the catalog, you will see there is a checkbox for Premier Solutions. Really, the requirement for Premier, and the reason why we're not a part of the Premier program, is because you have to be global. Now, we are based in Southern California. We have about 40 employees. We're not the size of Dell or Illinois. We don't have offices all over the world. It's the only reason why we're not part of the Premier program. But it does come with the Premier price tag, too. Just you would see if you ever got a quote. And here's just kind of a breakdown, right, of validated versus integrated systems. And we try to say, like, Microsoft, if you look at the breakdown, they have these check boxes, and one of them, like white glove services, right? And we felt like it wasn't fair for them to say that you only get white glove service with just the Premier solutions, because we always give white gloves. This is our forte. This is how we compete, and we win deals compared to these giants like Dell and Lenovo. So you could think of DataOn as being an integrated system plus provider, where you really are almost getting like a Premier solution without that global coverage that you get with Premier. We also have the most number of solutions, integrated systems on the catalog, and it's just testament to the fact that we are heads down, 100% focused on Microsoft. Is all we do. And, as soon as we roll out a new product offering or a new solution, we're getting that thing certified and added to the HCI catalogs. We have the most number there. We have our must software too, so that's included with the solution. And we really try to, even though they call us an OEM partner in the Gartner report, and you could think of us as a vendor like a Dell, right? We really try to strive to be that complete solution provider. So, starting with designing and giving you some options to figure out what makes sense based on where you see yourselves now and in the future, help you deploy. So all the systems that we actually that we sell to customers. We actually procure them in-house. We test them, we POC, we burn them in, we make sure everything's working tip-top shape, and we box it up, ship it out to you. They all include support and warranty, as well as deployment service too. So we have our integration team. They'll be working with you, lock and step, just every step of the way until you got that cluster up and running. And if you need help with the migration, we can help with that too. And you have premium support, 24/7, phone, email, help desk, all included, 100% US based, guys. That's something we're very proud of, and we plan to keep it that way. And because all we do is Microsoft, you're talking to, we know our stuff when we're talking about Azure Stack HCI. So, there's a lot of use cases, right? I think a lot of you right now are thinking about getting off VMware. You might not even have anything in Azure today. You don't even know. Some people might be weary, like, oh, I don't even have anything in Azure. I don't know how that stuff works. Now I got to set up a subscription. Well, we can help with Azure Landing Zone and making sure your Azure environment is all set up and ready to roll. And so these are things we're helping customers with. Virtual Desktop, big use case we're seeing, especially in the education space. So we actually have specialists on our team who we can help you with setting up that whole piece of it for VDI, SQL, and AI at the edge. So, so at this point, I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Benjamin, talk a little more.
Well, thank you. I guess let me just start like this. For you who have not been in the industry for 30 years, you'll find this crazy. 30 years ago, they were selling mice that the description was internet-ready mouse. And it's just stupid, but because internet was everywhere. Everybody was talking about internet-ready mice and keyboards. Well, I kind of feel like that is what we are today. AI is everything. In fact, when we went to buy the TV that we're giving away, there was a model that was a lot more expensive, and it was an AI TV. I had no idea what the TV was, but it was AI. And so now you see AI everywhere. And so, yes, it gets tiring. It's about time for somebody to show function in AI, to actually take it to the next step. And so let me run through this real quick. So after talking with all of you, I was talking about why AI, but think about, let me just jump over to here. So what we tend to focus on our entire, my company's entire career or life cycle, again, for 30 years, we focused on premises because just our customers looked at on premises, so it was a perfect, partnership with Data On. Well, when you're talking about something like AI, there's a lot of risks. And in order to mitigate that risk, what we do is, as you can tell, we take from the top, which is doing a lot of things in cloud where you have very little control. One over, is the AI engine version going to change? Where's your data going? Data is really needed right now. And it's needed by AI companies because if you read about it, they're always looking for new data to use to train their engines and models, and they overtrain them. If you look at like what happened with Llama 3.0 or Llama 2 to Llama 3.1, same size models basically in memory, much better results because they actually overtrained. They actually continued to train beyond what they had thought before. So everybody's looking for new data. Your data is being used. Your data, if your employees go out to ChatGPT, there's a reason why it's free. Your data is being used. It's used to fine tune. And so what our niche is, if we've been working with NVIDIA since 2021 and Microsoft, and of course running on Data On equipment, we've been working because we say, hey, you've got to give this capability so that people can run it on premises, so that we can mitigate certain risks. And so let me just kind of go through why at the edge. And just thinking about the conversations that we've had today, because I've got to look down on my phone to remember this. Consistency, creating data points that don't rely on latency to an internet connection, so that we have consistency of, if we're doing monitoring at an intersection, if we're doing monitoring at, like there's one use case we're talking about with emergency services, when the fire department, when the fire truck leaves. If we don't control all the different pieces, all the different piece of latency, maybe it's not a matter of we're monitoring, did they make it there in 10 minutes? It's, did they make it there in 5 minutes? We don't have consistent data. Latency for the sake of creating data points that are near real time. So if you're having to trigger on something that then goes to the cloud and does something, comes back, 30 seconds doesn't sound like a lot of time, but like one government agency we talked to, they said, yeah, by the time somebody comes in that front door, they're already at the inner door before our alerting system tells us, because they're using cloud AI. And so that 30 seconds is a big deal. Especially when you're talking about, we're not looking to create one data point, guys. We're looking to create lots and lots. Searching without concern for giving away PII. Using AI engines that meet your needs, not 1,000 other companies' needs that are not getting upgraded because they complained about it. Like things like public record requests, where data, as much as possible, never leaves your premises, so that you can actually go before council and say, yes, we know that our data is not leaving premises. We are doing everything we can. So there's a lot of reasons, and we really don't have time right now to show, but you know, the AI at the edge goes all the way from smart spaces to private LLMs, and we're just showing an example of, you know, where you're taking videos, a 20-minute video, and actually creating data points all from it and metadata, and then in a single pane of glass, combining those research and those queries with PowerPoints, DocX, PDFs, sound bites, all in a single pane of glass, where, you know, the goal is not to have the AI think for us. The goal is to take and elevate our thinking to another level. And so what we use is, we use AI to leverage our efforts. And so that one kind of goes through. And then the next, there's a project that we did for a customer. They basically had 18,000 files. They had no idea what was in those 18,000 files. I know that doesn't happen to y'all. I know y'all know what's in every single one of your files, and the file names didn't match up. And I know that's not a problem with y'all either. I mean, E5001 really tells me what it means. Well, they couldn't figure out what all these files were, and there's 18,000 of them. And it was an undelete utility that was undeleted from, you know, a month and a half before, so nothing matched up. They did not have enough hours in the day. And so the quote is, it would have taken days. Well, I disagree. I think it would have taken a month. But anyway, he was able to accomplish in 1 hour, because what they were able to do is able to scan through 18,000 files, create summaries of all the data using StrategicVision, be able to categorize all this, determine even what actually has real information across all data sets, and in an hour was able to, you know, basically see what was in them. And then, of course, then you get into smart spaces. So smart spaces, we're kind of out of time here, but smart spaces is where we're taking our existing data that is real-world data, as opposed to communication data or other types of data, but taking real-world data and mapping those to business rule cases. So we can say, hey, we're looking for a rule case that when we have in the bottom left, when we have more than 10 people show up, hey, we want somebody to know. No, we're not sending the SWAT team. We're just sending more security to that area. Or in the middle camera, where we're showing, hey, if a vehicle is in the middle for more than 15 seconds, let somebody know. Either, you know, we may want to detect this thing before there's a crash, before we hear the noise, but maybe it's a matter of a car stalled out. Or like in the Memphis area where I'm from, people doing donuts in the intersection. Maybe I want to know that, because whatever it is, it's an anomaly. It's not allowing somebody to use the intersection for what it's being used for. So there's all sorts of cases like this that we're working with NVIDIA of just coming up with new ideas, because yes, we might all be tired of hearing about AI, but in my opinion, we're tired of hearing about AI and seeing no functionality. So, and of course, we run all of this on data on equipment, because if you're running it locally, you need to run it 24/7 for 5 straight years with, you know, on enterprise equipment. And those GPUs, you can fry eggs on them. I mean, they are hot, you know. And so, of course, NVIDIA leads in every aspect of AI, both in toolkits and in the GPUs. So therefore, we only make it for data on, because that's the only one that we trust for 24/7. So we are about out of time. Yeah. Do you want to finish up?
Yeah, I'll just say, you know, I know we're all here to figure out what you're going to get off of VMware, right? But, you know, Microsoft is obviously one of the solutions out there. There's a lot of them out there, and they're all great. I think what makes Microsoft unique and interesting and, you know, compelling is the fact that, you know, you can do stuff like AI, like right on the same HCI cluster that's running your Hyper-V VMs, that's also running your Azure Virtual Desktops and leveraging the GPUs, partitioning those out. I mean, it's, you know, it's really preparing yourselves for the future. And, you know, for anybody that's interested, we'd love to talk more with you. So, thank you. Sorry, I don't know if we have time for questions, but if you want to come over after and chit-chat, we'll be happy to talk.